C5, a new standalone building on the current football field. Tonight we will show you videos on the 2 remaining choices, provide you information on the timeline, tax information, and an update on the ANRAD study, and more. The building committee, working with both TAPE, Doran Whittier, town committees, and the general public, will ultimately identify a preferred option. We expect to complete the exercise this spring. The preferred option will also include a detailed cost estimate. Next, we will run through a presentation providing updated details for the remaining options, and then we invite you to participate in a discussion.
So hi everyone, my name is Terry Hartford. I work with Doran Whittier, the owner's project manager, on behalf of the Burlington School Building Committee. I see a lot of familiar faces. I see a lot of new faces tonight, which is great. I'm going to go through a very quick overview of how we got to here. This process started almost 16 months ago. Originally in the fall of 2023, town meeting appropriated $1.5 million for the school committee to establish a building committee. And their first step was to run a competitive process to hire what is called an owner's project manager that works on behalf of the school building committee to come up with solutions for the high school. You may know Doran Whittier if you're familiar with the Fox Hill project. We perform the same role on that one as well. But so after a competitive solicitation in the fall of that year, we were hired. We then did a competitive solicitation for an architect, and in February of last year hired TAPE. Both firms have fairly extensive experience building schools here in the Commonwealth, from elementary all the way through high school. So with that being said, once both of those teams were on board, we spent a lot of time last spring looking at this existing building and a lot of existing conditions, exterior, interior, looking at all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems in an effort to determine what can be done with this building. And then in addition to that, TAPE, which I'm not going to steal Chris's thunder, came up with a whole bunch of options which were presented to the school building committee. Over time, some of those options get eliminated for a variety of different reasons. Culminating in the fall, where we narrowed the options down to 5. That was in October, November. And since that time, we've spent evaluating those 5 options even further and narrowed those down to 2, which I think Catherine mentioned. So if there are questions about how we got to this particular moment, I'm happy to entertain them, but a lot of the people I know in this room understand how we've gotten to this point, but we're here to answer any questions. I think we really want to focus on what's possible with the school and the options that the school building committee have narrowed down to. And ultimately, you know, we need to narrow down an option. The design team working with us and the school building committee and the community at large, including obviously the school, the administration, teachers, parents, students, but then also all of the other town committees that you're familiar with, whether or not it's Ways and Means, Conservation. We also will engage police, fire. As you come up with a project, you need to engage with all of those constituents. But over the course of the next 6 months, the intention is to take that preferred option, come up with a detailed estimate, one from the design side, but also to bring a construction manager on board who ultimately will give their estimate as well. You reconcile those. That number comes up with, this is what we believe this option will cost. That gets presented to town meeting. If town meeting agrees to take it forward, it ultimately, given the size of the project, which we'll get into, will result in a debt exclusion vote, which is up to the town when they want to schedule it. And so the schedule that is in front of us, or not in front of us, it's behind me, but in front of you, kind of outlines that schedule. So with that, I'm going to sit down for a moment. Yes, go ahead.
So when he was talking about community being involved, there were several working groups too. While all of this was going on for that, all the months, there are various working groups that, put together, with the teachers, for example, what will work best for the students and the teachers to build the best building possible for learning. And then we talk about, the facilities, what's going to work for facilities, what's going to help us, be most cost effective with our heating and all that kind of stuff. So there are a whole bunch of working groups that help, narrow down and help the committee decide on what, we needed to do to keep getting down to, where we are now with the two options that are left. Okay?
All right, I'm Chris from Tape Architects, one of the principals there. Good to see you all here tonight. As was said, these were the options. This is the full board of options that have been brought forward along the way to the building committee. And for various reasons, which can be looked back up on the building committee, on the website, which is on the trifold that you got when you came in, you can sort of go back to the history of why each of these were brought off at certain different times. The two that are remaining are AR8, which is it's a new building attached to the new academic building attached to the existing gyms and everything. You'll see that on this on a video just a second, and then NC5, which is a standalone new building down on Varsity Field. So we have a couple of videos that just kind of more succinctly give the details about AR8 and NC5, and those will be up on the website as well following this meeting, and so I'll play those now. Space button.
Here is option AR8, an addition renovation scheme that proposes to demolish the core of the existing building, maintain the upper and lower portions housing central admin, the auditorium, and gymnasiums, and construct a large 4-story addition shown here in yellow. This addition is located north of the existing auditorium shown in tan. The placement of the addition allows for the existing high school to continue operation during construction. Once the addition is completed, students and faculty will be able to relocate into the new space as work on the existing building begins. This addition replaces much of the existing high school program with new classrooms, special education space, science and technology labs, art studios, administrative and counseling offices, a media center, and a new cafeteria. Excluded from the new addition are the existing auditorium, music classrooms, and gymnasium, and associated fitness spaces that will be upgraded as part of the renovation. The renovation scope also proposes to keep the upper portion of the existing building and provide renovations to the non-high school specific programs, such as central admin, BCAT, and district maintenance. This scheme also proposes to renovate the existing cafeteria for Burlington's Early Childhood Center. The advantages of option AR8 are that it preserves the existing gyms and auditorium. The current varsity field and track remain and will be enhanced with restroom facilities. The high school remains in close proximity to the non-high school programs, fostering a sense of community through ease of collaboration and shared resources. The site plan proposes additional parking near the building and improves circulation throughout the site to enhance safety and efficiency. And lastly, the majority of the high school program will be newly constructed, and the addition with space is designed for 21st century learning and with exterior windows. The disadvantages of this option are as follows. Due to site conditions and the addition's interface with the existing building, the school will have long circulation paths and minor level changes throughout, but the building will be made fully accessible. The design features a courtyard that may be considered a disadvantage due to required maintenance. And lastly, the proximity of the construction and required phasing may be disruptive to ongoing school programs.
All right, and then this one is NC5.
Option NC5 proposes the new construction of a 3-story replacement building on the existing varsity field shown here in yellow. The scheme also proposes work to the existing building, which includes demolition of the core and renovation to the upper and lower portions to remain. As the existing varsity field and track will be displaced for the new building, the plan proposes to relocate the varsity field adjacent to the current practice field and the track to the site of the existing building as shown. The option includes reconfiguration of Dottie's Way and the student parking lot to mitigate traffic congestion on site and enhance pedestrian safety. The proposed scheme includes 2 entries on the north side of the building, one directly feeding into the academic wing and another functioning as a community entrance with direct access to the auditorium, gymnasium, and cafeteria. These entry points lead into 2 corridors that circulate around a central courtyard. The courtyard provides daylight to interior spaces and serves as an outdoor learning area. The 3-story academic wing houses classrooms, special education space, and technology labs, optimizes solar gain with a curved form facing directly south. At the first floor level, the eastern side of the building cuts into the site's steep slope. Doing so creates the illusion of a 2-story building from Cambridge Street, with a secondary entrance leading to the Media Center and Cambridge Plaza that are located on the 2nd floor. Following completion of the new high school, option NC5 entails work to the existing building that includes demolition of the core and renovation to the upper and lower portions to remain. The upper portion is planned to accommodate non-high school programs, such as central admin, district maintenance, BCAT, and Burlington's Early Childhood Center, whereas the lower portion preserves the existing gymnasiums and athletic spaces for the after-school and community use. The advantages of NC5 are that it allows the existing high school building to continue operation with minimal disruption as the new building is being constructed. The design proposes a centralized layout that creates better program adjacencies and creates a separation of public and private space. The site location allows for level floor plates that result in better circulation and easier accessibility. And finally, the building is oriented south to maximize solar gain as a sustainable design strategy. The disadvantages of the option are that it will displace the existing varsity field and track off-site during construction, and the new track and field will be separated. Furthermore, the outdoor PE spaces will be located farther from the new building. Staff parking adjacent to the building will be limited and may require some staff to park farther away on site. Given the proximity to the site entry, the location of the new building may create traffic congestion at the intersection with Cambridge Street during school drop-off and pickup. And lastly, the design features a courtyard that may be considered a disadvantage due to the required maintenance.
All right, hope that paints a pretty good understanding of the 2 options on the table right now. As far as ANRAD, which is specifically a process that's required for the NC5, the wetland flagging by the wetland scientists has been done. You can, if you want, walk out there and see the flags everywhere. The second process on that is that it has to be surveyed by a land surveyor that gets it on drawings so that we can react to that. The surveyors were out there today. I was out there with them, so that's in process, and then the goal is to have the entire report done and submitted to the Conservation Commission for a hearing scheduled on April 10th. That's our goal right now, and so we're hoping to meet that deadline and have a hearing for that, which establishes the exact bounds over there that we can put fields in. So. That's the NRAD process update currently. And then I'll turn it back over to Terry for costs.
Thanks, Chris. So what we have up there were, I think, the last 5 options, AR2 through NC5, and you also see R1, which really just assumes the renovation of this entire building. And so, you know, I think people wonder how this happens. So the design team comes up with preliminary designs and basically comes up with an amount of square footage for each space, and then puts in the educational program that they work with, and that designs a space, and that all translates into a square footage. Those square footages on all those things get put to an estimator. You may be familiar with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. The estimating process is fairly well known. TAPE used one of the 2 estimating firms that work on every school in Massachusetts. So, you know, the numbers that they put to it are relevant to today's dollars. And based on those square footages, when you look at AR8, and NC5. The numbers, on a total project cost estimate are between $334 and $346 million. Those numbers are right now estimates, and they will change, but they're a reasonable expectation of what we expect this project to cost. I've said it to the building committee, and you can see me on film. I said this project's always going to start with a 3, given the square footage. In addition to not just the square footage that we have associated with the high school space, I think everyone here recognizes that Burlington High School is not just a high school, it's a community building, and there's a lot of functions that I think are mentioned in the videos of aspects of this building that are non-high school related, but they're super critical for Burlington. So that includes the district offices, central admin, the early childhood center, BCAT, the science center. All of those things aren't necessarily what we would put in a high school, but the building committee has made it clear to us, and I think most people in town recognize that those are all real assets that we need to deal with. And either way, some of those spaces are usable, but they still need to be upgraded because they don't meet today's code. This auditorium doesn't meet today's code. I can't have my parents walk from there down to here. And when you walk through this current building, if you're familiar with it, we have what are called streets, which are great if you're on a skateboard, but if you're looking to just walk from one end to the other, that actually translates into 13 different elevations on the second floor. You have to walk down steps to go up steps to get to the same level. That's no longer acceptable in today's building environment. You don't see buildings that way, and so anytime you want to renovate a building, you have to bring it up to code, and to bring up this building to code would be considerable, and that's what that $330 million number is. And that would entail going piecemeal through the building one bit by one bit, which would be as disruptive as you can imagine for the students. And I think the building committee rightly said that's not something we want to do. It would also include putting modular classrooms on the site for several years. So kids would be learning in a modular space as opposed to inside a building. And so for that reason, and those many reasons, R1 got eliminated. And so what we're left with now is the AR8 and NC5. I will mention, we tried to condense as much information as we could for this audience. We do have a website, bhsbuildingproject.com, that basically has every single meeting that we've had dating back to November of 2023. It has a BCAT video of every single SBC meeting that we've had, and there's a ton of information, reports that have come out through this process that you're more than welcome to review. I think it's tough. There's also a handout that we put out that's a 2-page condensed version to try and inform people. On that slide is a website. You can take a photo of it with your phone and get to it. There's a lot of, I think, meaningful information on that site, and allows you to ask questions of not just the SBC, but of the design team, of myself, my team, Chris's team. So thank you for that. I think we're just gonna, oh right, taxes. Yeah, how could I forget taxes? So taxes here in Burlington. In working with the Burlington Ways and Means Committee, the way taxes work, they're sort of, as they take on amounts to bond, they assume, you see that in the bottom left, $3.34 per $1 million borrowed. And so when you look at this project, and I'm going to use 300 million because that's easy from a math perspective. 3 times 3.34 is just over $1,000 for the mean assessed valued property here in Burlington. The mean assessed value of that property is presently $783,000. So to the extent you're above that, your number is going to be above that. To the extent you're below, it's going to be below that. And so when you look at the options that we've talked about between $330 and $350 million, that increase is somewhere between $1,100 and $1,200. And so that's what we've tried to graphically show. on the site. Hopefully that is clear, but I'm happy to answer questions, and I know I love taking Doug and pointing. Doug is on Ways and Means. He's also on the school building committee, so to the extent there's more detailed questions that I can't answer, I'm happy to, thankfully, give the microphone to him. So in any event, what's the next slide? Q&A. So with that, I think, I don't know if members of the committee want to say something. We can pass around the microphone. This is a meeting for all of you, and we're happy to hopefully answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Terry. And again, I guess I probably should introduce myself if some of you don't know who I am. I'm Catherine Bond, and I'm chair of this Burlington High School Building Committee, and I'm also a school committee member, and I've lived in Burlington for 29 years. I did want to say that, people have been reaching out to us, on the website and sending emails, and I mean, part of why, we created this flyer or this pass out, the trifold, is we wanted one place for people to really see everything, answered, the most common questions about this project. We did put it on the front page of the website as well, because a lot of people were saying, I have to click here and click here and click there. And I know that when you look from your phone, you have to know to, look for the 3 little bars in the upper right-hand corner to get where you want to go. When you're on your computer, you can see all the tabs. So, I know, for people, again, who use their electronic devices a lot, you know what to do, but those might get frustrated. So again, we put this on the front page. We put it also in 2 other tabs in case people didn't see it on the front page. So I'm trying to make sure that we have the information all in one place, easy to find, so hopefully people don't get as frustrated trying to find out information about the project.
Hi. I think most of you know me. I'm Chris Monaco, currently the chairman of the school committee. I think that what I'm feeling in the community is sort of a division of people who think that AR8 is the best way to go, and another group that thinks that building on the field, which should be NC5, that's the best way to go. And what I'd like to ask all of you is to have an open mind and realize that what we have to do is come together. Because as a building committee, all of the members, we want to do what's best for Burlington, but we don't want to pit people against each other. So in order for this to come to fruition, and in order for us to have a good chance of passing a debt exclusion, we need some unity. We need to hear from you what you think is the best plan, and then whatever it is, we need to all get on the same page and make it happen. If we don't, if we lose a debt exclusion, we've wasted $1.5 million, and we're right back where we sit today in this school, which is a really good school, but it's kind of built like a prison. It has a lot of needs, and we really need to replace it. One other thing I just want to point out is that whether you look at the new school on the field as a brand new school, or whether you look at AR8, AR8 is, except for the auditorium and the gyms, it is a brand new school. Everything else is replaced. So with that in mind, I'm just hoping that you can give us your input and help us to make a good decision on which way to go.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Randy Miller. I live up the street. I just have a couple of questions. I think I contacted somebody on the website, but so the numbers that we just saw briefly on the screen, there was an increase of, in my head, it's around $60 million. Anyway, about $60 million for AR8, and in addition of, it looks like 50,000 square feet to the new construction side. What I was concerned about, a couple of things actually, but the first was on the website, which is very detailed, I appreciate that, thank you. I looked at the project finances, but those finances are still showing the numbers from back in November. The breakdown doesn't show any of the updated numbers or how those numbers were gotten to, and whether or not they take into account now constructing 2 fields for AR8 and what the contingencies are for the road work, et cetera. So I was just curious when those detailed numbers are going to be showing up and where the extra 40,000 square feet came from on AR8.
Sure. A lot of questions there. Happy to start to peel that onion. When we came up with the original options, it's called PDP, which is the Preliminary Design Program, and you'll see in the 4th column there total square footage. So AR8 was at 250,000 square feet. It now, over in the same column over there, is 364,000 square feet. When we presented the options back in October, it was for high school only programming. And when we came out of that discussion, and the committee basically instructed us to say, well, it's not just the high school. We need to account for all these other programmings. And so through the course of going from PDP to PSR, we had to kind of levelize things to include all of the extra square footage associated with those programs. And that's why when you look at the options that are in front of us, we've kept the gymnasiums. We've kept district offices, which, you know, I think at the time I was saying, well, that's 40,000 square feet. But it's a 2-floor building, right? So while I was calling it 40,000 square feet, well, there's a 2nd floor up there, and part of what those upper buildings will house once, you know, we take either option forward is basically additional space for the community. What the town chooses to do with that is a matter later on, but that's why the numbers have increased, and I understand AR8 to where it is now from the 270 to 334, but that is largely the case. So let me just try and hit on some of your other questions. I'm not sure when you were last on the website, but okay, so I'm not sure where you're looking, because in the project finances tab, I was on it this morning as well, and I'm not here to argue. What I can tell you is that so in
Terry,
PSR,
one second. I think your email, you were looking for a spreadsheet similar to what we had before. And I think what's on the website is a PDF document that lists every cost. And you have to go through everything for AR8 and for NC5. So it's not in one little neat place for you, I think. So I apologize for that, but I just wanted to chime in on that.
Yeah, no, so that document, it's 95 pages. Like, I don't want anybody to read 95 pages. What I can tell you is in the first 6 pages, it shows a 1-page summary for each of the options. And then each option probably has about 13 to 15 pages, line by line, of things that you were asking about, roads, electrical, MEPs, like it's all detailed there, and it's extensive. What I will point out is that is construction costs only. And when we get those numbers, you then have to add what we'll call soft costs and contingencies, which typically adds up to 25% to those numbers. And you go through schematic design, ultimately construction documents, you narrow that number down. But based on the experience that our firms have had and throughout the Commonwealth on public school projects, that 25% above construction cost is pretty consistent. So that's where you get that. And before I open, do you have other questions? I want to make sure
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. The 40,000 additional square feet that I was talking about
Yes.
was under new construction on your graph right now. If you look at the new construction for November 24.
Yep.
And new construction for AR8 for March, it looks to me like there's a $40,000 difference.
There definitely appears to be that. So I'm going to turn that over to Chris and let him sort of answer that. Sorry.
Yeah, so the process between PDP and PSR is a constant revision of space in each of the options. And so we're constantly pushing things from new to old to new to old. And so when we got the sort of directive to go with all of the non-high school spaces being a part of the project, you can see originally it was like 20,000 plus, or 20,000-ish. And then the other options, some of them had zero, some of them had different amounts because we weren't sure how that shook out. But then when we got that and we moved them over to the right place, and then we pushed and pulled on the options, various things would come out of the existing and move into new, or how we were accounting for those were shifting and changing. And so it's basically these programs, and until we are done with schematic design and get to that final schematic, the numbers are going to continue to kind of ebb and flow as we push and pull on the program. You're adding more and more detail as you get through it, and so we're getting finer and finer onto things and picking up, like we may have left some space out, or, you know, realized there's an office here, an office there, or the program over there that was in a space that we needed for non-high school space now, and we had to bring that back into new construction. And so the exact chess game of like what went from what place to the other place is something that's just in the process. And so that accounting of where we landed, this is the educational program for the students, 1,100 students is the number. And then we put that in a spreadsheet and we get the square footage we need. So it's a pushing and pulling game. And that's why the PDP, everything is changing, it's evolving. And to the cost estimate page at PDP, it's kind of a rolled up, like one sheet page kind of thing. And then when you get to PSR, it's 95 pages because we're starting to put more detail into new data that we have. And then when you get to schematic design, it's going to be one option that's 95 pages instead of 3 options that's 95 pages. So we're continuing to add more and more depth and layers as we get further and further kind of pinned into the option that we're looking at. So, yep.
Hi, my name's Russ Morton. I brought with me a member of the class of 2043, if I have my math right, and I just wanted to come out, even though I got to get her back to bed, to support the new construction. I think it's the best choice. While it is more money, it gets us on a strong foundation. It's ultimately going to make our property values go up having a new high school, and so I just wanted to come support her future. Thank you.
I'm going to have Roger Bell go.
Good evening, Roger Bell. I'm also a town meeting member in Precinct 6. First of all, is this particular display on the website?
Yes.
I believe so.
I just didn't happen to notice it when we were going through.
So this particular slide is actually taken from the last SBC meeting, which would have been dated 3/13. So it's the last meeting. That particular slide, I believe, is slide page number 35 or 36.
Okay.
So,
good to know.
yep.
Did miss it. Couple of questions. Number one, NC5, you're going to relocate the high school to the ball field.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to put in a new ball field and a track in a different location.
That's the plan.
So are those costs figured into the cost of the high school as well?
Yes.
Because we just spent $250,000 to put the ball field in.
Yep, they are included in that, and you will see that in those estimates. And look, my own kid didn't have a high school field for 4 years, and they built a new school, and they had to rejigger fields and this and that. So I know from a parent exactly what you're talking about, and getting rid of a field. That might not be the right solution for this community. I don't know. What I do know, and I think is what folks need to know, is that NC5 is predicated on our ability to recreate a comparable varsity field on that site out there, and that's what the whole ANRAD process, and if we can't fit that there, it really doesn't matter what it costs. We can't do it, and that's going to kind of sort of push us in a direction, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, because it's my understanding there's also some wetlands involved on the back of the practice field as well.
There are.
So, you know, I mean, that's a full impact on that as well. How is that viewed in terms of the Conservation Commission when you show them NC5?
So the Conservation Commission will be, they're privy to this process. That when Chris was talking about the ANRADs, so right now we've sent wetland scientists out there. They have flagged it. That will then get surveyed, which was being done today. That then gets put on property maps that we're all familiar with. That then gets put to Conservation. Conservation will go out there and either agree or disagree with what the wetland scientist is saying in terms of what's buildable area. And through that process, we'll know what we can or cannot do. And so that's a process.
Now, just to discuss the elephant in the room, we're supposed to get a 25% tariff tax, which is going to impact building material.
It is.
How do we know where the cost of this is going to end up?
It's going to hit everywhere. And so it's difficult for me to say. So the price of that's not going to go up 25%, right? It's on materials costs. So an example is most of steel comes from Canada that gets put into these buildings, right? But it also hits every single trade, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, every little bit and piece that comes from somewhere else gets taxed based on tariffs that are around the world. I think generally in the construction industry right now, they are anticipating that those tariffs will translate between 1% and 3% increase on a building's cost. What we've included here includes escalation and a ton of contingency because of where we are in the project. I can't predict what the federal government's going to do, but it is a concern, and you're right to bring it up. I don't have the exact answer for you.
So when you come to town meeting, you're going to have to be able to tell us exactly how much you're going to build in that's going to be different from what we're seeing now, is what I understand.
That's absolutely correct, sir.
Thank you.
And Terry, did you want to, when we were talking about the ANRAD study, that if we get everything completed, that we hope to present to Conservation, I think it's April 10th?
Yeah, so Sure.
Thank you. I'm Bill Boyven, Vice Chair of the Conservation Commission. Obviously, our responsibility is to enforce the Wetlands Protection Act and protect wetlands where they exist and a buffer zone around them. We're aware that there are numerous wetlands on this property. Previously, they had been flagged around the school and around the existing athletic field, and Conservation did come out and confirm them with very minor adjustment. We had not yet seen the wetland flags around the practice field and where the new field may be constructed under the proposed NC5. My understanding is the flags were very recently finished, and we've seen a rough draft of them. Again, we haven't confirmed them ourselves, but it appears that the wetlands are greater than originally expected and may intrude into the existing practice field already. So we need to confirm that with our own experts. And then I must state that 99% of the time, the existing flags that are done by professional wetland scientists, we verify them with one or two minor movements. This one moves a few feet, that one moves a few feet. So more than likely, we'll primarily agree with what's there because I'm assuming it was done by professionals. But that is a serious concern. Before we saw new flags, we had some questions as to whether it was feasible to put the field that, as you know, that they hope to put there, including stands and stuff like that. Obviously, the previous envisionment of what was able to be built on wasn't big enough to include the track that currently exists around the field. So it's already somewhat tight. And if the wetlands have gotten larger, which they do because it's been, I don't know, 10 or 13 years since they were flagged previously, if I remember correctly.
2015.
Wetlands change. Groundwater levels change, rainfall changes. So the wetlands could have changed since that time. So that's the current position of the Conservation Commission, is we're looking forward to seeing that. And we don't make any decisions until as to approving an actual construction until the final plan is available and comes before us, and then we say, okay, here's your final plan, here's the wetlands, and yes or no, it can fit, or something else has to be moved, or whatever. And that'll be down the road. Right now, all we're going to have as our next step is approving the wetland flagging. So that's my conservation pitch. While I have the microphone in my hand, I'm going to put on my town meeting member hat. And I've been a town meeting member for about 13 years, Precinct 1. I take the job seriously, and I think one of the main responsibilities of town meeting members is to make sure that town dollars are spent efficiently and effectively. And in May of 2022, town meeting approved significant funds for a study of the town's athletic fields throughout all of the playgrounds, schools, and everything else. And that study produced recommendations that would involve millions of dollars of improvements to fields around. Some of the playgrounds are horrible, some of the places are good. But during the discussion on that, discussions like this, there were significant comments from parents that playing fields in town were in such a state of disrepair that some parents were sending their children to other schools, private schools, or even schools in other communities, because the current fields didn't support the athletic opportunities they wanted their children to have. And even to the point that they felt that Burlington athletics were being put at a disadvantage to other communities because some of the better students wouldn't come here and play here because of the conditions of some of the fields. With that in mind, I don't see any logic in tearing up and throwing away the best athletic field we have in town that cost us a lot of money. It makes no financial sense, and as a town meeting member, I don't want to throw away money that we've already approved. The field is in great condition. The turf, the drainage, the drainage system, the track, the stands, the press box, they're all in wonderful condition, and they'd have to be tossed as part of this program. And during that time, athletes at the high school would have no on-site field facility for a full 4 years, which would include some students full term in the high school, you know, from grades 9 to 12. So proposal AR8 would protect this valuable town asset while constructing a new high school. And yes, I said a new high school. It will be a completely new academic building with the auditorium and gymnasiums still at this site, but upgraded as well. So I think the quality of the educational facility will be the same whether the new school is over here or over there. And it will all end up being a new state-of-the-art facility. So I would strongly recommend proposal AR8. I might find it hard to vote for a proposal that throws away good money that's already been spent. Thank you.
Can I just thank you for that? I don't disagree with anything you just said. Ultimately, it comes down to the school building committee to recommend an option. But everything that you just said, including all the wetland stuff, completely agree. And I think folks have wondered why we did an initial ANRAD and why we didn't do those fields out there. Because at the time, we were considering putting a new school basically on the student parking lot. And if you look at NC1 and go back, you'll see this narrow building that sort of meanders through what we flagged on the wetlands, and I think that's what you were referring to. Through the course of PSR, we came up with other options, including, which many folks in this room I know don't like, putting a new football field and stadium in between the upper and lower buildings here. And, you know, that had associated, you know, pros and cons. I think the building committee has moved off of that, but part of that was, okay, well, if we can't do that, where can we put a field? And that's why we then explored what can we do on the practice fields, knowing it's a challenging site. There are numerous wetlands. It is a wet site. Like, I'm not arguing that. And that's why we're determining what we can or cannot do to know if that's a viable option. So, and then the last thing I wanted to mention was, totally understand what you're talking about. I was an athlete myself, so was my kids. That facility's awesome. Love it. I'd love it if it had a bathroom. I'd love it if it had concessions. I'd love it if it had more of a field house on it, which I think was envisioned. And I know that what we've included in AR8 includes, some dollars for a concession for bathrooms, because that facility under AR8 needs some love as well, because it's not there. And if your kids play sports or you come from another town, you get there and the first thing you say is, "Where's the bathroom?" And then everyone chuckles at you and they're like, "Well, you can go to the Porta Johns up there, you can walk all the way a quarter mile to the front of the high school." And so I think part of AR8 is an acknowledgement, and I wish Eric was here, Dr. Conti, because I'm saying this for him, that needs to be enhanced as well. Is it millions and millions of dollars? No, but there's some dollars that we need to invest in that facility to bring it up to what I think people expect to have at their athletic facility. So with that, I'll just give the microphone to somebody else.
That was easy. Hello, Jeremy Harrington. I'm a town meeting member, and I just had a couple questions and a couple comments. First comment is, when I went to high school, I went to Belmont High School in the 90s, and our middle school burned down, and all the middle schoolers got shoved into our high school with mobile classrooms. So thank you for taking R1 off. My sisters were in middle school. It was awful for everybody. So good job in taking that off. But what I did want to know is the disruption. I will have 2 kids in the high school, overlapping possibly with these projects. So for AR8, I see 42 months. But is there a rough, I know it's early stages, but is there a rough timeline about when those new classrooms will be open and the kids will be moved there? Because I assume some of those months are for tear down and renovation here. And the other question I have is around the fields we were just discussing. And that is, what is the lifespan left on those? Because with NC5, we'll have all new fields, but with AR8, we may have future field investments to make shortly after the high school is built, depending on that lifespan. I know that's not necessarily in the scope of your project, but there may be a perspective on that. We could learn about future spend we have coming as well.
So on the construction timeline, I think a good way to look at it is that with any new space, it's going to take approximately 24 to 28 months to build that space to have the kids in. And so in the example of AR8, 2 to 2.5 years from breaking ground, which, in the current example, we'll use what I think is conceivable, which is we would do a schematic design, ultimately get town funding approval. By the fall of next year, we would be releasing early release packages, which is now help me out here, spring of no. This is what happens when we argue. Spring of 27 shovels in the ground, so then 2 years after that, right? So probably that fall of 2029, kids are moving into that space. Then, in relation to AR8, we're then spending the next 12 to 14 months demolishing and renovating this building, and then probably another 6 months dealing with some exterior site work in order to get everything put the way it needs to be. So it is an extended period, but it's a good question in terms of, well, when's the new space available for children? And it's probably 24 to 28 months after shovels in the ground. And then remind me what your second question was, because
The football
field
field.
replacement. So look, you've got a tremendous investment in that field. Every single field, turf field, I don't care where it is, 8 to 10 years is the life of the carpet, right? And the carpet needs to replace every 8 to 10 years. Over the course of some of those cycles, you then sometimes have to deal with drainage and what's under the carpet. I don't think you're in that case. I think an estimate to just recarpet the field is well, where's the guy that has the exact?
Let Bob answer that.
Bob, what's the latest estimate on recarpeting?
Roughly $1 million.
Right. And so, but that's a cost you have it already, right? Like 5 years from now, I think the last carpet was 2018. 2019?
Last carpet was 3 years ago.
3 years ago. So 6 to 8 years. And as certainly all the abutters know, that field gets used all the time. And so it's going to need to be replaced. But that's something that would go into the school budget that I would just expect you to have to do. And it doesn't matter if you have a new school or somewhere else. When you put in field turf, it gets replaced eventually. Does that answer your question? Yes. Yep, thanks.
Hi, my name is Kevin Botiglio. I'm in Abada. I live on Valley Circle. I just feel like, if I'm being honest, AR8 has the best chance of getting passed for our town. The field has been an issue the whole time. It's caused a lot of heartache. I appreciate your time, consideration. It's been a painstaking process. But moving the field into wetlands, they're called wetlands for a reason. I walked over there several times the last couple weeks. It's drenched over there. It's totally soaked. And I don't know if anybody's considered, if you build a new stadium there, the impact on the environment. We live downstream from where that stadium's going to be placed. Now, the town used to hand out pamphlets quarterly about PFAS in our water system because we had our own facilities here. My understanding that this field could cause microplastics or PFAS to be released into the wetlands, which would come downstream, end up in Sunset. I just worry about, a level of toxicity. I know it sounds, like I'm being an alarmist, but it does alarm me because I live downstream from it. I feel like AR8's a brand new school. They keep the field for the kids, and it's the best plan of action. I mean, there's a poster outside the school right here. I don't know if anybody's noticed it. It shows the field, and it's waterlogged. It's like a swimming pool over there. So I just don't know how, that it could be considered that it would be safe to put that stadium in, because if the water level rises, the pellets will rise up and be released into the stream. There's several towns that don't want to build a stadium near wetlands, and the track that's over there now, several years ago, at one point in time, there was all pellets that were alongside the track that formed. And I just think that they all end up in our stream, and I don't think that's right for the abutters, the taxpayers that are paying a lot of money for this, if that becomes a problem. And our community, AR8, I feel like is the best solution that has the best chance to pass. I will vote for AR8. NC5, I can't stand behind, and I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alex Rutfield. I'm a town meeting member. I was just wondering that I think the video mentioned something about a gym still in the original building with NC5. Can you talk a little bit more about what's going to be left in this area, and especially anything that's likely to be used by the high schools regularly? I know it's going to be mostly the non-high school programs, but what is the high school is still likely to use that's going to be around here?
Yeah, sure. So either option envisions keeping what's commonly referred to as the upper buildings and the lower buildings, and for one's north of the other, and it gets all confusing, and Chris Monaco's going to talk to me about the library. But so the upper buildings is basically where the back of the building is, in my mind. So you come around the corner, there's district offices there. That's where all the superintendent is. We're talking about, there's a cafeteria that's there that we're talking about moving the Early Childhood Center into. And so that would remain as its own building, effectively, yeah? And then in the lower portion, under either options, you have the existing, you're super fortunate in this town. You have two very large gymnasiums that most communities don't have. And most communities, when they build a new school, definitely don't get that from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And so the intention is they are structurally sound on the outside. We need to renovate them, get them up to code, get some more natural light into them, get them, new mechanical, electrical, plumbing into them, but those spaces would remain. And so those effectively become the gymnasiums. In AR8 for the school, in NC5, they're in addition to a small gymnasium that would be put in NC5, which effectively is for PE, but it's sized so that you could have a high school basketball game there. But, you know, if Burlington makes, you know, the quarterfinals and wants to have the MIAA quarterfinals here, you're going to utilize the big gym right down the street here. Does that help? Okay.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Colley. I'm on the Burlington Select Board. I'm also a parent to 4 kids, 1 in high school and 3 elementary school kiddos. And I am very invested in this project. I've watched every single meeting. I really appreciate the work of the committee to get us to this point. I would love to see a new high school in town. I am coming at this from the perspective of a parent of young kids who could benefit from a new high school, and also a select board member who is hearing from and speaking with a lot of community members who have valid concerns about the impact this could have on them from a financial perspective and their ability to even stay and live in Burlington with the addition of $900 to $1,000 on top of everything else we have going on in town and all the other uncertainties going on in the world. So, and these aren't folks who are, you know, the unreachable automatic no votes to any tax. It's really people who are invested in the town, who care about kids, who see a value in this project, but they just don't know that it's realistic to swing that kind of expense. So I'm wondering from the committee if now that we have it down to these 2 options, we can really like dig in and hone in on the numbers, and if there are any thoughts about revisiting the idea of the non-high school space, as was mentioned previously. I know those programs are, you know, they have merit, they're important, and I'm not advocating for getting rid of them by any means, but maybe this could be a phase 1 and that could be a phase 2 kind of thing. You know, we see the huge jump from PDP to PSR for AR8, and you know, maybe that's not due to all to non-high school space, but if that is a huge factor, if we can get it down by, you know, 40 million, that's a police station right there. So that could have an impact, and you know, everyone realizes that this is going to be an expensive project no matter what. It would just be good to see kind of like a good faith effort by this committee to really try to get costs down, and you know, while still providing a top-notch educational facility. So as we look ahead to what will inevitably have to be a town-wide vote in order to support this, if folks see that that effort was made, and you know, there will be a sense of trust in this committee that we really did look at all the options, and this was, you know, the final most viable option, and people will feel good about supporting it. So I just encourage the committee to kind of steer away from the mentality of when comparing costs of these things, you know, it's just another $50 a year, it's just another $100 a year, because, you know, that didn't work with the Community Preservation Act a few years ago. I don't know if it will land with this. So I just ask you to, you know, really come from the perspective of where can we feasibly get those costs down so that everyone in town can get on board. So, and maybe one of those options is revisiting the idea of the non-high school space. So I'll shut up now. Thank you very much, and looking forward to your feedback on that.
Hi, Katie Toro, community member. I have more of a question of the timing of breaking ground. I have a current sophomore, and this would affect him for graduation if it's spring of 2027. This class, the graduating class of 2027, was highly affected by COVID. They were 5th graders when COVID happened, so they missed the last half of their 5th grade year. They missed their moving up ceremony, all of that stuff that comes with 5th grade and moving into the middle school. So I was wondering, spring 2027, is that like a general timeline? Could we push it past so our kids could graduate on varsity field? Because I feel like that would be a huge win for them. That's it. Thank you.
Great question. I think knowing how construction of schools typically start, they wait to the end of a school year before they start breaking ground. So I think your children will walk on varsity field, and if they're like my kid, I think they get an advanced graduation in June 6th or something like that, and on June 7th we'd probably go to work. So I wouldn't worry about that. That's always the intention, is to kind of have a natural break point, but it doesn't discount the disruption that will happen when you build a project next to an operating school. What I can tell you is that it's done all the time. And you hire the right people that try and manage that to the best they can, working with the school administration to minimize disruption as much as we can, knowing that it's an active construction site. It's a job. It's a full-time job for sure.
We're gonna, this over here, where Bob is.
Oh, hi. My name's Amanda Lee. I'm a 10-year teacher in this building at Burlington High School. I wish more of my colleagues would come to support this project. I've lived in Burlington for 10 years. I see both AR8 and NC5 as a win for me, considering that both will be new buildings. I have attended the meetings. I've looked at the website. I grew attached to some of the projects myself. I was formerly a teacher in Drake-It, where we went through a renovation of our building, which was the worst possible option, and I'm really glad that that's something that we're not considering here for Burlington. For me, I believe that the committee's done a really great job in, I guess, valuing the abutters. Obviously, in a dream world, NC5 would have been the best choice with Varsity Field right here. I understand that that's not going to happen because we listened to the voices that were in the room and the concerns from the abutters that said that they did not want that to happen. So as of right now, we know that that's not happening. But for me, and for I believe all of the people in Burlington, we just need to make sure that this project happens. That's the most important thing, and whether it be the financial aspects, the wetlands, or whatever it's happening, the most important thing is that we do what the committee said and we come together to make sure that Burlington has a building that we can be proud of. Arlington did it, Billerica did it, all of our neighboring communities have brand new high schools. It is time for this building to go. It has to go. It is not supporting the students anymore, and we know we saw students from the class of like 2040 that need a new high school. So trust me when I say I am behind whatever project. Being a teacher in this building, I'm behind whatever project happens. In my dream world, it would have been NC5, but honestly for me, a new educational space is new educational space. So I wish there would be more teachers here to support this project and to hear all of you out. I'm also a taxpayer in this town too, so I totally understand that. I know we are all so in love with Varsity Field, and I'm in love with it too. I've been a teacher on that field multiple times for graduations, so I totally understand. We're proud of it. It's a beautiful field in this town. To speak to the previous points, I've had 2 children that have played BYBA, Burlington Softball Association, and many other sports, both for this high school and, for this town. And I can tell you right now, by visiting other communities, our fields are not something to be proud of at all. Other schools, Shawsheen, Framingham, they have baseball turf fields. We don't have that. We've never had that. So there are many, many issues with the athletic complexes in this town. Yes, Varsity Field is the best one, but we need to continue supporting both the athletics facilities, but more specifically, the educational spaces in this town. The educational spaces. I understand that field's great, but the building is the most important thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Eileen Sickler, and I first want to thank the committee for having another round of conversation. In terms of this schedule, I did find this in the PDF. So in summary for me, it says that in AR8, there had been 250,000 square feet, and now there's 364,000 square feet, so that's an increase of 114,000. Going to NC5, there had been 265,000, and now there's 377,000, and that's an increase of about the same amount, 112,000 square feet. The respective costs, on AR8, the cost had been 271 million, and now they're 334 million. That's a 63 million increase. But what's odd is NC5 stayed flat. There's no price increase on that. And the other thing is, to Mr. Miller's point and Sarah Colley's point, the non-high school now looks like it's about 100,000 square feet. But if anyone could answer my question on, one, why is there an additional 110,000 square feet on both options? And why is there such a price increase on one and 0 on another? Thanks. I'm going to hold on to this if you like.
I'll assume that one's for me. Very good question. I think what you'll notice with NC4 and 5, let me get this all through my head. So the total square footage on NC, what's that?
Okay, so the 228 on NC4 and NC5 is new construction. That's kind of our baseline program that is enabling the 1,100 students, and it's kind of, when you move that into an AR option, it's not a precise science because you're trying to fit different programs into different spaces, so they kind of push and pull a little bit. The increase is really kind of largely in that, if you see the second asterisk bullet point, there's 96,000 square feet there, and we only carried various levels of 34,000. And then when we're looking at keeping the auditorium or not and other things up in these sections, we're just moving things around to try to get all of it to work. And like I said, program shifts between PDP and PSR. We have the space summary at PDP, we have the space summary at PSR. When that's all driving all of this. And so the 96,000 includes all of the building, and then one of the big increases was on the second floor. So the upper portion, which is up there where the admin, the central admin is in the cafeteria, there's a second floor to that, and everything this way of that in the middle of the building is coming down. But there's a second floor that doesn't have identified program in it right now. It's roughly about 30,000 square feet. And the central admin would take over a portion of that, but then the rest of it's going to be left like demolished and cleared, almost like a vanilla box, ready for other program to come, but we're not spending much money on it. It's just getting the school program out, and it's 30,000 square feet of space that is available for other town uses should that arise somewhere. So we're kind of creating growth space for the town with not really spending money. If you put something in there, you're gonna have to spend money to build it out. But it's just basic, floor, walls, roof, no real anything in there. But that's another kind of adder on these that wasn't there before, because when you pull it out, move space over, it's just left over, and it's second floor that has to be there, so.
So I understand that, but out of 110,000 square feet, I mean, that's one large number, 30,000, that's sort of in there for, TBD, I guess. But is there another large number that makes up that 110?
The whole upper portion of the building is 96,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's go to the second one, the 63 million. So why is there 63 million additional costs on 8 and nothing on 5?
It's just, at this phase, it's really just a purely square footage kind of, on the new stuff, there's far less square footage on, and I see it on the uppers too, but so what happened early on was, or not early on, there's actually a slide, I don't know where that is, Ways and Means. When we estimated the PDPs, we went through and said, we think there's something that needs to happen. So the initial NC4s and NC5s were saying, we're leaving this area, we need to put some money in for something, we don't know what it is. Terry and I said, let's add another 30, 40 million. We just tried to guess at that point at PDP because we didn't have clarity on scope. And so the NC4s and NC5s, we actually, we put an adder in there for that. And then when we got the actual scope clarity for it, we almost nailed it. That's the story there, is that we almost nailed the guess at PDP that we didn't understand. The answer that I think you're looking for on the ad reno just popped into my head. So I think this is what, if we go back to PDP, you can actually look at this. I don't have the slide available tonight, but for AR8, if you look at the site plan, it was just the lower portion of this building, and we were demolishing everything, and there was an athletic field up there. None of that was included in the program. So all that 96,000 is the chunk of space that is included for that additional add on AR8.
Okay, I guess I'll have to go back and listen to the tape. But, so just to get back to Sarah's point, again, there's now 100,000 square feet for non-high school. And if we could come up with some creative ways to shift that to not this invoice, to not this $300 and $400 million, I think that would go away as a selling feature.
Yeah, I think that's wise, and I think the building committee should examine if there's a method for that on your town meeting warrant or, the ask. I will say, as part of this project, we'll need to do something because a lot of the systems are tied together. And when we sever that in the middle, we're going to have to do something on the top portion. Even if we leave everything exactly this way and leave it for another day, we're going to have to do something there. And I don't know what that cost would be, but that would be part of the exploration, right? And just say, maybe we need to put a big air handler down there so that they're separated buildings. But it's not a complete nothing factor, right? So I just want to say that building committee hears you, I'm sure, and we can examine that.
Yes, my name's Doug Farrell, Sunset Drive. It's a simple question. In NC5, you're doing 703 seats in the new auditorium. Everyone I've asked says that this auditorium has somewhere in the vicinity of 800 now. It was a little bigger when it was built, and when they did the new seats just a few years back, or 10 years or whatever, or 20 for all I know, they went down, and so it's somewhere around 800. When they use this building they fill this 800, they fill it. 700 is going to be too small. That's my question.
Yeah, we would match what's here. So.
Thank you. John Eiler, Town Meeting and Ways and Means. So Ms. Sickler stole a lot of my thunder on this, so I'll try to make it a little more concise. So when I'm looking at it, I see 110,000 square feet got added to both options. The 96,000 is the same in both options, yet one got 63 million more expensive and 6 months longer, and one got 1 million cheaper and 4 months shorter. And so I understand some things shifted around, and I see in particular that AR8 had stuff shifted into new construction, whereas NC5 had it shifted out. Something doesn't ring true with this. The feeling I get is that you had a really sharp pencil when you were working on NC5 and squeezed every last little bit out of it. And then from a Ways and Means point of view, the obvious option of $270 million, which was, $70 million cheaper, somehow the pencil got broken and everything got vastly worse. And it just seems odd that the estimation could be so much, the initial estimation could be so much worse in AR8 than NC5 that it all of a sudden magically got really close to just as expensive as the seemingly more preferred option. So I guess I'll second Ms. Colley's point, which is sharpen your pencil a little more in AR8, and let's get a true estimate if you worked really hard as if that was the one you cared about, and let's see what that can get down to in the same way that NC5 seemed to really be drilled down on. Thank you.
So, John, I appreciate that, and obviously things have moved from PDP to PSR. I know when I met with you, and I can send you the slide, you'll look in the far right-hand column, and it says a $35 million adder for NC5 that's not part of the estimate, which I didn't include with AR8. So I guess that's my fault, because at the time, AR8 never even contemplated doing anything there. And so I agree with you on an apples-to-apples basis. We need to make it clear. I've heard the concerns from Ms. Sickler. I've heard them from you. We will do that. I do not think that we were trying to show one better than the other, dollars and cents wise, but I have to prove that to you. So allow us the opportunity to put a couple slides together with materials that we've shown before to show you how we got from A to B to C. Is that fair?
Hi, my name is Ryan Joyce over on Chandler Road. I have 2 young children in the school system. I do want to reiterate the importance of whichever option is chosen. It needs to have broad community support that it actually gets passed so that something can happen. That being said, as someone who experienced an ad reno during my high school career, I wanted to add my firsthand experience of what it was like. My school class went through all phases of an addition renovation in which an area directly adjacent to the school was regraded and added onto during the first year. The second year, students were moved to the new wing while the original building was renovated. And by my senior year, we were finally in the completed building. The noise and vibrations during the demolition and construction was a constant disturbance, at times making it impossible to hear the teacher or remain focused as desks would shake across the room during class. It was also disorienting to learn a new layout of the building constantly, where classrooms were, where appropriate entrance and exits were, and given the current focus on student safety, it's extremely important for students and faculty to be fully aware of entrances and exits in an emergency. We also need to keep in mind that the students who would be experiencing this disruption during some of their most critical times in education as they prepare to go to college and enter adult life have already experienced an educational disruption stemming from the COVID pandemic. I don't think it would be fair to the students to add yet another hurdle to their education when there is a viable alternative. Thank you.
I just want to make a couple of points. The disruption to the students is a big factor, and at a recent meeting, I kind of went out on a limb and I said I preferred the NC5 because mainly my reason was that the disruption to the kids could be a problem. Having given it a lot of thought and coming to the conclusion that what really, really, really matters is that we all get on the same page. I can live with either option. I'm happy to live with either option. But I wanted to point out to my dear friend John Eiler that we did not try to make NC5 look better than AR8. We really didn't. I can understand how you might suspect that, but we didn't. And I think one of the things that may have affected the numbers a little bit is there's so many people that want new construction that we are really working hard to make sure that AR8 is all new construction, except for the auditorium, which would have to be renovated because it is not handicap accessible, and the gyms, which have to be renovated just because they have to be renovated. But I want to emphasize to everyone that whichever option all of you want is the option that we will go with, and we just need to be together on this and make it happen.
Okay. Hi, my name is Chris Warren. I'm a town meeting member, Precinct 4, and I see the advantage of the NC5 is because it's a whole new location, there's less disruption for 2.5 years. But I think in the end what's going to happen is that probably the varsity field is not going to be able to be built on the wetlands or the wetland field, whatever it is, and it's going to end up here, and it's going to have irreparable damage to all of the neighborhoods around for the rest of their lives. So 2.5 years versus the rest of your life, for me, it's kind of a big, it's for me, it's clearly the AR8 is the right, what I would be in favor of. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Martha Simon, and I'm a community member on the School Building Committee. And I just wanted to point out that the site that this building is on, the site this old high school campus is on, is very constrained. I had hoped, there were a lot of options at the beginning, but there wasn't a lot of choices because we're constrained. There's a cliff. There's a wetlands, there's a floodplain, all of that. We abut, several neighborhoods abut here. And I'm looking for the most sustainable building, and the NC5 definitely fits that. But there are major problems and there are major advantages to both of these options. And the School Building Committee I want to support what's been said, that we want to find a solution that everyone can get behind, because it's a very expensive project. We all know that, but it's been put off since before I was on the school committee, and it's not going to get cheaper. I agree with all the concerns about the money, but it is not going to get cheaper. And so I just want to say that I hope we can understand that there are pros and cons. We're going to have to make a decision, and then we all need to kind of get behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nolan Glantz. I'm a Precinct 1 town meeting member, and I had a couple of thoughts here. So personally, originally, I liked, I'll use air quotes, liked the idea of having a cool stadium field and all that stuff, and I understand the drawbacks of that in terms of the neighborhood. And I further understand that the committee officially took that off the table, the idea of putting the varsity field here where the old building is. And therefore, I believe NC5 is contingent on finding a location for the field. And in particular, since we don't have the results of that study yet, I think that we can't choose until we have the results of that study. Because if the study says, sorry, it's a nice idea, but you can't put the field where the practice field is, the wetland field, if that's infeasible, then NC5 comes off the table, I think, by definition. And so I think we're debating or arguing it a little bit prematurely. That may take it off the table, and I think we're done. But if that doesn't take it off the table, then I think it becomes a viable option. All the concerns people have about that maybe change. So is there a reason that we have to make a decision before the results of that study? Because I, for one, I'm having a hard time with the rest of this conversation when I hear about that field, since we don't know yet whether we can put it there or not. When will we get that result, and can we defer the decision till after that?
This is good, yeah. The current plan is to have the package ready for Conservation's next meeting on the 10th, which is when the building committee next meets. And I think it's a point that the building committee can take up and decide that night if they want to wait or not, or if they wait long enough, maybe they could outpace the conservation hearing or not, but in the same night. But I think, yeah, it is contingent on that. That's a good point, and that's where we're at, so same night.
Before we go on, and I know, Michelle, you've got the microphone in your hand, I promised David Miller, because he couldn't be here and we're not on Zoom, that if he had a comment, I would read it for him. So I'd like to do that. It's very brief. He says, I'm Dave Miller, town meeting member, Precinct 4. I'm not a civil engineer, but I am an engineer. And to me, AR8 is the way to go. I would support that at town meeting. So I did promise him I'd read it, so I wanted to make sure I did.
Right. Hi, I'm Michelle Huntoon, town meeting member, Precinct 1, and parent of a daughter who will be class of 2039. I think Nolan and I are on the same page with this, so I have a question. If the field study comes up, conservation doesn't pass it, it's not feasible, is NC5 just dead in the water? Is that it for it?
I think it pretty well nails it shut.
Okay. Well, I had a couple of points to make arguing for NC5 because I would love to see a new high school here. One of those points is I don't like the idea of the disruption. Just like you were saying, it's going to be very disruptive to the students as it's going through. You know, going to school on an active construction site, I have a lot of concerns about that and the timing of it, the confusion. As far as the tax implications, I like, you know, the numbers that were put out here. What I want to say is, you know, an extra $9 a month to have a more efficient, better option where we're starting from scratch. I think that's nominal, and I think it's worthwhile. All that being said, as Nolan was saying, I think this is a bit premature, and I honestly don't have any confidence that the field will be able to go over there. If it can be, then I still like NC5, but I'm just going to echo what a lot of people have come out here to say, which is we all need to get behind whatever plan is agreed on. And if it's AR8 or if it's NC5, as a resident and as a town meeting member, I'm voting in favor of it, and I'm going to encourage everyone around me to do the same. So hopefully we can come together and figure this out, because our kids, these students, the teachers, everyone in this town deserves better, and we need to, you know, get our facilities to a point where they reflect what our values actually are and what we think, you know, our kids are worth here.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dan. I'm a dad of 2 elementary school children, so I wanted to thank the school building committee for listening to everyone's feedback over the course of the project. Before tonight, my mind was made up that I'd like to ask the building committee to consider the new build option. It's less disruptive. There's a petition online to support it with voices of other working parents who couldn't be able to speak here tonight. I think we need to do what's best for the students, but also for the teachers and the parents and the district, and a renovation is disruptive. So building a new field and then a new school will be ultimately the least disruptive transition for everyone. I fully intend on staying a Burlington resident for decades, so I'm happy to support the new build if it's viable with the conservation study.
One second. We're getting close to 8 o'clock. We're going to take this gentleman here. I can't see the back. We're going to take one here, and then we're going to wrap it up, okay?
Oh, hi. I'm Mark Woods, town meeting member, precinct 7. It's not on. Oh, sorry. I'm Mark Woods, the town meeting member, precinct 7. With respect to the non-school section that's been talked about that would be rehabbed, what about Meadowbrook School? Is the Mount Hope School going to be renewed, their lease? If they're not, couldn't we move all of the non-school function to that building? And wouldn't that save the town a lot of money?
First of all, we have no idea what Meadowbrook's going to do. The selectmen would know far more than we do on that. But even if we were to do that, we'd have to renovate it, like, totally, and it would cost a lot of money. The other piece...
Would it cost more than what we're spending, or what we're proposing to spend? Do we know that?
No, I don't know that. Based on being in that building many times, it's a lot bigger than what we are dealing with up here in the top part of the building. But also the bottom part of the building, in either case, remains part of the campus, so that would have to be done anyway. So it's just the top piece that you're talking about, and I can't give you any idea of cost, but I have a feeling that that Mount Hope might be staying. I don't know that for a fact.
So I believe their lease is up within 2 years. So is there anyone from the select board, have we had any discussion with the school on their intentions? It's 5 years? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, it's 5 years from now, okay.
They've done a lot of work over there. They've made all kinds of changes to the building, and they've added another building. Personally, I'd be surprised if they want to leave it. I understand they want more space, but we can't answer that question because we don't know.
All right, and then with respect to, again, what Nolan said earlier about, since we don't know, although I think we all have a pretty good suspicion that the field is flooded almost all the time, and I don't see how you can put anything on it. So I think AR8 is going to be the choice, given the wetlands. I understand that there is disruption, but there's disruption with NC5 as well, because you're going to have to drive by the construction every day, and there's going to be a lot of noise, probably blasting at some point. So either way, there's going to be a lot of noise. Might be a little more noise with AR8, but I think just from a perspective of, and I don't trust the numbers either, there's something fishy about NC5. So you'll have to, I guess I'll say you got to prove it to me too. I would be in support of AR8 at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Zach Ross. Hi. I just want to say that I moved to this town about 7 years ago. I've been wondering when we were going to renovate this building, actually, for a long time. I love the brutalist movement, but I think it was better in the 70s. I really appreciate everything that everybody has said here. I think it's been exceptionally valuable. And I appreciate the architect's time here at Dore & Whittier. Thank you guys so much for coming out and listening to us. I understand how hard it is. I'm not going to tell you what profession I'm in, but I understand. I actually, when I saw that 270, I haven't been at previous meetings. I actually saw that and I went, that's not right. I actually felt like that was really low. So I think that was, like was mentioned earlier, I think it was actually off. And I bet you that you could probably poll a bunch of other people who might be in the AE industry, and they might say, oh, I bet you that 35 was missing, which I'm sorry, I forgot your name already. I'm bad with names. Terry, what you said earlier, how that 35 was missing, I think that was just something that just kind of got left off. I agree with what everybody's kind of said, though. I think you need to wait, because until you know what NC5 can happen with NC5, you don't know. I have a lot of reservations about NC5. I actually still have a lot of reservations about here. I don't know if you've done any borings. You mentioned the fact that you're probably going to be gutting a bunch of stuff, and now you're going to have central things going back and forth. So please, I encourage you to look into that, because I think I speak for everyone here when we don't want to leave something behind. We don't want to spend all this money, create something, and then in 10 years people are like, oh man, you know, that high school, it's not as good, it's kind of gross. So like 50 years from now, we want people to look back and be like, wow, that was a really amazing high school. We need to build another one just like the one that was here. So let's keep that in mind as we go through this process, that we want to leave something. We want to create something together that in 50 years, we're still going to be like, yeah, I was a part of that. I helped create that. I spoke up and I made sure that we made something beautiful. We made something that people think back and they're like, thank you for making that for us. So that's my thoughts. I really encourage Dore & Whittier, take that back to your employees, take it to your engineers and the civil guys and everybody, and kind of really try to encourage that. Thank you.
That's our intention.
Okay, one more person.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kim Negron. I'm here as a community member. I'm here tonight and represent 300 people who have signed a petition asking that the school building committee please consider moving forward with the NC5 option. Parents like me with young children and doing all the things, taking care of family members, et cetera, can't always come in person to these meetings like everybody else. But please know we are passionate about the project, about a new school, and I assure you we will get out and vote for one when the time comes. But bottom line, and I understand everyone's concerns that were conveyed tonight, I feel like everyone is so hyper-focused on the minute details, they're forgetting the big picture. Like, for this amount of money, what we can get, what we can do for not only the students today, but the students for the future, like, it's a no-brainer. So please just keep this in mind when making your decision after, the Conservation Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bob's convinced me one more, and then we're done.
Yeah, Jim Capuzza, resident, and I understand both of these buildings are going to be LEED certified. So my one thought is, in AR8, in their consideration, the fact that you're reusing the auditorium to be sustainable as opposed to knocking down the auditorium, and then also being able to do the refresh of the auditorium and renovate the gymnasium. Seems to me from a sustainability standpoint that that's certainly a lot more conscientious to being sensible, and so that you also are not demoing and starting 3 projects and then putting all of this in Varsity Field into a landfill. That's my thought. But to this person's comment earlier, once you're in that new school, you'll be happy that you're in a new building. So, the kids won't know the difference. They'll be like, wow, this is awesome. Thank you.
Okay, again, thank you all for attending. I really appreciate your input. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everybody. Again, please attend our committee meetings. I want to thank you all again for attending. I would also like to acknowledge the town meeting again for providing the $1.5 million to perform this feasibility study. I also want to thank the High School Building Committee and the Burlington High School educators, students, and the community members for the many hours of time given to this important project. I think we're making great progress, and I look forward to providing regular updates to town meeting and all town boards. And again, please visit the website, www.bhsbuildingproject.com, for the most up-to-date information. The next meeting is April 10th at 6:30 p.m. in the school committee room. And again, as everyone's been saying, let's work together so we can find an option that the whole town can buy into. Thank you.